Aloha, and in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde. So, given that putting this video out right before January 2022, there's going to be a retrograde period in January. And I wanted to put this video out there to kind of just give you some background information about retrograde and what you might be able to do during this period of time here. So the first thing though is why do we even care about Mercury retrograde? So people actually get too caught up in it. It's really not a big deal. It's a chance for you to go inward. It's a chance for you to reflect and to work on things inside. And then when the retrograde period ends, it's a chance to really put into practice or action in the external world the things that you had worked on. So, it happens 3 weeks, 3 times a year. And so, you might hear people talk about whether it's electronics or contracts or communication or things that just maybe people talk about all sorts of different examples of things like maybe they ordered airline tickets and they got the date wrong or whatever. And so what is retrograde? Well, Mercury is the planet representing communication, the planet representing thought and thinking. And so things like, oh, don't sign a contract during retrograde. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I would say whenever you're signing a contract, talk to your attorney anyway. And from a pure retrograde perspective, I think the spirit of what that's asking of you is just misled. It's misleading you because to say, like, if you have a business, to say that you're not going to sign contracts for 9 weeks out of the year is kind of ridiculous. The spirit of it is what can you do to be able to sign a contract? And so for me, I'll talk to my attorney. I'll review the agreement in a little bit more detail. Like, so those are, the types of things that we'll do. So the Mercury retrograde period is a chance for you to navigate communication, navigate your communication, any forms of communication that's coming your way, and to be able to address those situations where it might be a little bit more bumpy than usual, but there are ways to navigate that. So that's the gist of Mercury. Why we even care about it? You'll hear a lot of people talk about Mercury retrograde, perhaps, or they'll blame retrograde for certain things, and it's just not the case. I certainly encourage you to watch the intro to the channel video, my video number 1, to get a little bit more information as to the approach that I take to these types of things. So, what is retrograde exactly? Retrograde is an apparent backward motion of the planets. And in this case, since we're talking about Mercury retrograde, we're referring to a backward motion of Mercury. Mercury represents, like I said, communication and thinking. And so when a planet goes what's called retrograde, it's an apparent backward motion because planets don't actually go backwards. It's just from the vantage point of where we're at and the way that the orbits work, it appears as if the planet moves backward. And so when a planet does that, or especially in this case with Mercury, it's really reflecting going inward. There's nothing to be scared about with retrograde. It's a cycle, and so as we continue talking about cycles on this channel, it's just one cycle to be aware of, knowing how it is for you when Mercury is direct or when Mercury is retrograde. So now, what are some ways that we could actually navigate Mercury retrograde? Really consider the words like review, revisit. One of my favorite ones is relate. It's not one that's often talked about during a retrograde period, but really to triple check things and just have a little bit more like a due diligence on slowing down a little bit. Mercury has to slow down when it's about to go retrograde. It does a thing called station where it basically isn't moving. I mean, it is, but it looks as if it's not. And that then is a moment for you to slow down, to then shift inward. And then it does the same thing again as it begins to move direct, okay, at the end of the retrograde period. So, considering the rewords, considering processing things internally. And I actually put together a master class on Mercury Retrograde where I go over retrograde in a little bit more detail. And I give you some very practical tips for navigating romantic relationships during a retrograde period, and navigating friends, family, business, clients, or partners, and things like that. I also have in there the my astrology questions and answers program, where I go over a lot of how to use astrology in an empowering way. So if that's something you want to dive into more, take a look at retrogradesecrets.com, retrogradesecrets.com. And if you like this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe. And as always, aloha, ahui ho. I will connect with you again soon. Take care.